Good morning, everybody, and welcome to this seminar, which is a collaboration between Purple Tuesday and the CareTech Foundation, and also we're extremely grateful to Welltower for loaning us their building. I'm Martin Green, and I am the Chief Executive at Care England, and I have the great honour of chairing this event today. What we're going to focus on is the experience of people who use services, identify some of the lessons that we've learned both in COVID but also through engagement with people who use services on how to improve things and how to deliver a better quality of life. We're also going to address some of the issues about how we make sure that our sector is a very welcoming place for people with a range of disabilities to work in. And I think one of the challenges is that we have diversity in the amounts and types of services that we deliver, but we have been very poor at engaging people who have disabilities in part of our workforce. And I think they would really enrich our ability to understand how service users can get the best out of services. We've got a very impressive panel of people who are going to discuss this issue, and I'm going to ask people to just give a very quick introduction as to their name and what organisation that they work for. And then I hope we will go into a very good and rich discussion about some of the issues and hopefully come up with some thoughts and innovative solutions to making things better for the future. So without further ado, I will ask you, Adam, to begin your introduction.
Thank you, Martin. My name is Adam Hutchison. I'm the Managing Director of Belmont Healthcare Group. We're focused on delivering services to elderly people with disabilities and mental impairment.
Hello, thanks Martin. Bandit Bogle here. I head up Knight Franks Healthcare consultancy team and was previously part of the senior management team at Porthaven Care Homes and also part of championing social care.
Hello, I'm Mike Adams and I'm Chief Executive of Purple and the founder and creator of Purple Tuesday.
Hello, I'm Alfie Dodia. I'm with Jay Dodia. I'm one of the co-founders and directors of Serene Care. We specialise in dementia and residential elderly care.
So, Martin, thank you so much. Jonathan Freeman, I am CEO of the CareTech Foundation, which champions social care, those working in social care and those in receipt of social care. I'm also Vice Chairman of Championing Social Care, which we can talk about in a minute.
Tim.
Hi Martin, Tim Reddish. I'm proud and privileged to be invited and a member of the CareTech Foundation Advisory Council, but my other hat is for years I've been involved in elite performance sport. I'm a governing board member of the International Paralympic Committee, and we've recently took the focus of using the field of play to highlight the ability of individuals with a disability and how we can focus on them having every opportunity to be in the environment, in the community and certainly in the workplace.
Thank you, Tim. And now we've got some people who are joining us virtually. So let's go now to Ruth Owen, the CEO at Leonard Cheshire. Good morning, Ruth.
Yeah, thank you. I'm Ruth Owen. I'm the CEO of Leonard Cheshire. I'm also a non-exec director of Motability Operations. I'm on the steering group for the Mayor on diversity and inclusion. And I was recently the regional stakeholder chair for London for DWP. And just for context, we run 125 homes with regards to supported living, independent living and nursing settings. And we also work internationally.
Thanks very much for that, Ruth. And now Tom Lawson from Gilbert Mather.
Hi there, yes, I'm Tom Lawrenson from Gilbert Mayer. I'm Divisional Director here of Elderly Care. For anyone who doesn't know, Gilbert Mayer recruits within the social care sector. And we've got Anna with us.
Yeah, I'm Anna, I'm marketing manager here. I work alongside Tom to help promote recruitment in the social care sector. So I'm working a lot on disability recruitment at the moment.
Thank you. And then we have Margaret Wilcox, who's Regional Assurance Lead for the West Midlands at the Department of Health and Social Care. Good morning, Margaret.
Morning, colleagues. My dogs have just decided this is the moment for them to have a play fight, so I'm sorry if you get distracted. Yeah, so I'm one of 9 regional assurance leads for the department that's piloting what the new assurance model will look like in the future as part of reform. I remember recently retired Director of Social Services and a previous president of ADAS.
Well, welcome everybody. And I should just warn people that because we have a very blended approach here, that we have some people who are online and some people in the room, I will try to make sure that everybody's contribution is captured. And I also want to welcome those who are watching us via the stream lead. So I think one of our big challenges in social care is looking at how we as a social care sector can really get care operators to understand more about the people who use services, and also understand how that we can be more receptive to people in our workforce. So I know that Ruth, you've done some work on that, so would you want to lead off on that for us?
Certainly. Yeah, we have done some work on it actually, and interesting what we're doing at Leonard Cheshire. We're making people with disabilities centre to everything that we do through the board, through our leadership team, and we're recruiting somebody to lead on this space for us. So we want to make Leonard Cheshire the place of people that with disabilities that want to come and work at Leonard Cheshire, and we're looking at that across the board. So not just in, you know, as you would typically see that you would think with a disability it would just be our core services, but we're looking at what that would look like at the front line as well, and how we can do that. So it's very much part of our key objective for next year, and I think at the minute we're just about to secure somebody that's going to lead on that work for us and make it our #1 focus. And I guess the other thing that I do as well, like we have a disability network within Leonard Cheshire called the Den, and I'm the exec sponsor, and I'm talking next week to the organisation around December the 3rd, and I've just done a speaking event this week with Clifford Chance around International Day of Disability. So for us, it's actually making sure that Leonard Cheshire is inclusive as the communities that we serve.
Thanks. But Pavli, I know that you've also addressed this issue. So how have you done that in Serene Care?
So thank you very much for asking. I think that as a small provider and stuff, I think everyone is wanting to be inclusive. It's not like anyone goes out of the way not to be inclusive. But the thing is, sometimes it's just lack of awareness of what there is to do. There's so much information out there, but unless you're given this information quite quickly and stuff, this is the thing. How do you implement it? So as a small provider, I think that lack of awareness in terms of things like making reasonable adjustments when you're recruiting staff. But what does reasonable adjustment mean? Why is it difficult for us to all know all these things? So again, I think that there's training opportunities that the sector would really benefit from. As a sector, we're really keen on mandatory training. There's just so much of it. But something that we would be really benefited, have routine mental health first aid, British Sign Language training, unconscious bias training. There's so many things that really would benefit the sector as a whole. And also, like I mentioned, as a provider, you need this information. So, for example, there's a disability confidence schemes out there, but as a small provider, you need to educate them. Where do you start? People don't always know how to start. They're not trying to say, I don't want to do it, but they need to be guided by it. The other thing is there is support out there, there's access to work schemes, but they can't be bureaucratic and stuff, but they can't be so difficult to tap into. As a small provider, it would be brilliant if we could have access to occupational health, who could guide us and tell us those websites and resources that were shared for us, and things like that would be very beneficial for the sector as a whole.
I guess it's about looking for the opportunities rather than the barriers as well, and I think as we know, obviously we keep talking about the sector in sort of in a crisis in relation to recruitment, and it's about and as you say, as a sector, I think we're incredibly inclusive, but actually we need a little bit more support around how we can support other people definitely into work. I don't know what you think, Adam. There's so many roles within care homes where everybody can make a fabulous contribution.
Yeah, it was interesting that Harry mentioned about awareness. There's almost like a disconnect. It's kind of like that we see it as the vulnerable adults that we sort of operate and sort of care for, and then the workforce. And actually there's a much more blended approach, and I think that there's a lot of value to be had by just generally creating a more focused awareness around recruitment in terms of how we manage the intake, how we advertise roles, because we're not very. I think one of the first things that really sort of struck me when Purple Tuesday was introduced to me was just around Purple Tuesday's own website, in the how accessible it is, and it's like, well, why is nobody doing that? And if you put that down into recruitment, well, you're not going to get certain people apply for roles if actually they're if the website's vanilla, or the way in which you apply for roles is vanilla and doesn't give you, doesn't take in any sort of visual impairment or larger text or just general those sort of things, you're kind of removing that. So I think it goes really down to a very basic level of being. When we say about all of the stuff that we can do within the organisation to be more inclusive, but you can step it back even further to say, well, how we actually are trying to attract people and saying we are happy for, want people to apply, want people to be involved in what we're doing. There's some really simple little steps.
Yeah.
So when we use the word challenges, I don't really think it's challenges. It is down to this awareness and education piece of just going, hang on a minute, why don't we do that?
Yeah. But other sectors are doing it. We just need to learn from those sectors and share from them. And it's stuff like, if it is just adjusting timings, it's the closest parking spot, it's things like that are very simple changes, but we need to know what they are. And if there was examples of good practices that we could say, well, actually, here's ways you can adapt it, I think that would be actually beneficial. But we could share these ideas and go, well, we have managed to, it might be a matter of changing the lighting perhaps, or something very simplistic, but we don't know that unless someone shares these ideas for us.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because it's actually, like to go back to actually the base of individuals that we actually look after. We should be more aware because we're doing it and it's kind of like, well, hang on a minute, we've missed that the connection. Really, we should be closer to it. So it is a little bit of a hands-up moment.
Yeah.
Just wanted to come in on a couple of observations and comments, because obviously you live, breathe, eat, and sleep this every day as your work and everything. So I come from a different sector. So for me, I just want to pick up on a couple of things that I think might be interesting for you to think about and go away. I don't think there are barriers out there. We need to change the terminology. They're blockages.
Yeah.
And if there's a blockage, you either get your rubber gloves out or you bring in dynamite. Or something in between. We can always unblock something.
Yeah.
So I think we need to start changing terminology out there from barriers, because barriers gives this connotation that it's fixed and it's immovable. Whereas a blockage, you can unblock it. So that's my philosophy and my approach. Reasonable adjustment is an interesting view. I think that for me, we'll never ever be able to work out what is reasonable adjustment, because we're all individuals. We're all different. And the one thing we don't do well enough is talk to the individual first. We go away and do all this research. Well, the rules say we need to do this, we do that, right? The best way to find out what works right is to engage with the individuals.
Yeah.
Not go and read up on it on a website and things. Engage with the individuals, because you'll find that the individuals you engage with are better at adapting than what you are, because as disabled people, we've had to adapt all our lives. We're good at adapting. So provide us with the opportunity to fail or succeed. That's all we want.
It's like you said earlier, Tim, isn't it? Sometimes the most frustrating thing is when people think they're helping by doing something for you, by taking your rucksack you were talking about, I think earlier on when it got lost in Kenya. You're absolutely right. And as a sector, we do this every single day with the people that live with us. Everybody's got, we have these conversations. How do you want us to support you, to enable you?
It's like anything, you need practice, getting it right, getting it wrong, and learning from it, right? So if you're new to recruiting and stuff like that, this is just learning from those experiences and stuff.
But I think the disability community also have a responsibility, because we have to be able to be confident and not fear speaking to you in a way that nobody's going to take offence if we're challenging what you're doing as a disabled person. Because I've come from being sighted to non-sighted, and sometimes I thought, crikey, are they going to be a bit upset if I say what I think here? I've certainly changed over the years. So.
I think we've got that down to a fine art.
I've got a gold medal in that one.
But also, Mike, how has the Purple Tuesday initiative been received by the sector? I mean, have you had good engagement with it?
We have, and so Purple Tuesday is all about improving the disabled customer experience. But the point is that it's not just about one day and it's not just about Tuesday. So I'm absolutely delighted today that we're doing Purple Tuesday on a Thursday to prove that point. And it's about what we do 365 days that matter. And I just want to go back to the point because I think it's absolute truism. We all want to be inclusive, but it's about what do we do, what are the solutions to make that a reality. And for me today, social care is personal. I was a recipient, I was a disabled person recipient of social care, and it matters to service users in social care today. And I think what's really important is that we get to see, and why I'm excited about this is because I think social care have a responsibility to see service users as customers who happen to have additional needs. And that is the frame, and that is why I think Purple Tuesday is the opportunity. Social care really should be at the vanguard of the change around how disabled people are perceived. They should also be in the vanguard of employment, because we all know that the best kind of employees are people who have got lived experience in the sector. And I think there's this perception that disabled people are wheelchair users, etc., and all, to use Tim's language, the barriers or the blockages. Well, actually, what we know is 80% of disabled people have hidden impairments. And so there's huge opportunities for the next generation of social care staff to be the beneficiaries of social care today. And the only sector that really can do that is social care. So there's a real responsibility. And just while I've got the floor, I think there's as we redefine accessibility, I think there's three things we have to think about. One is the built environment. So it goes back to your ramps and it goes back to your lifts, and you only have to see COP26 3 weeks ago when the Israeli minister couldn't get in the building because they forgot to put a ramp. So that's incredibly important. It's about online accessibility. And I will say to social care, the gateway into your business is online. And if you are not accessible online, then you close the gate before people can even get through. And the third element is people. It is people, and by people I mean your staff. And it's taking them on that journey about culturally what it means to you and the why, and why service users should be seen as customers. So in terms of care homes and stuff, actually, yes, it's important we have the conversation, but you need to go back into the homes and you need to take your staff on that journey. And then very quickly, we can really transform the sector and be at the vanguard for others to follow.
Thanks. Margaret, can I bring you in here and ask whether or not you think the reform agenda is going to help this process?
Yes, I mean, we're working hard on it at the moment, trying to make sure that every aspect is covered. I think I'm right in saying that there's been at least 230 stakeholder events, most of whom are either with people with a disability or a disorder, and indeed people that work with them or represent them through various charitable and voluntary organisations. So I'm assured that the centre is listening to all of this evidence that's coming through and is actively seeking to do that literally on a daily basis, and will do until the white paper has been published until the end of this month. And then, of course, there will be a formal consultation as well.
Thanks, Margaret. Tom, do you want to add anything to that?
The next point is probably where we'll come in, so I don't want to give too much of what I've got planned to say there away now, but I think Angela touched on a good point. Within social care, the amount of jobs just within a care home, for example, is so diverse, from a handyman to a nurse to a domestic assistant. There's a job for everybody. Just because, yes, some disabilities will stop you, or make it harder to do one particular type of role doesn't mean that there's a complete closed door for all roles within a service and within a company.
Yeah, I suppose, Tom, whilst you've got the floor, let's move on to that next sort of question, which is about how we deal with the issue around making these roles very attractive, and how do we make sure that we are open and inclusive in how we recruit, and take on board all the things that were said by Mike and Tim and others about how we position ourselves as a sector to say that this is a place where it's a good place for you to work. And I was really struck by what you said, Tim, about the issue around people with disabilities know how to make those adjustments. And it's about the employer, but it's also about having a proper conversation with each individual about what works for them. And I guess how do we enshrine that, Tom, in the way in which we approach recruitment and retention?
Yeah, well, I think first we need to highlight the benefits of hiring disabled talent, to be honest. I mean, there's multiple benefits of hiring talent. Firstly, obviously, simply it increases the candidate pool available to you. It creates a workforce that reflects the diverse range of customers it serves in the community in which it's based. Obviously, this is particularly prominent in the social care sector, as people with disabilities can relate better and generally have more empathy with residents and clients than those who don't have the disabilities. There's been numerous studies that have found that disabled people actually perform their tasks to a better level, higher work quality, because there's less jobs available to them. They value that job a lot more than others, and also it reduces the employee turnover, which is obviously a huge issue in social care. There's a massive shortage of nurses, healthcare assistants in the sector. So if somebody from a disability is going to be more loyal because they haven't got necessarily as many opportunities as others, that provides a huge benefit to care, the care sector who do take on people with disabilities. Another benefit I wanted to touch on was how disabled talent can bring additional skills to the business. For example, British Sign Language. This can result in massive savings for those businesses rather than having to bring someone in who specialises in these aspects. And then, yeah, as I said before, the diverse roles within social care. It's such an opportunity to bring in disabled talent from different sectors and different areas that they can certainly do the jobs that are required of them. In terms of going on to how we attract, hire disabled talent, do you want to touch on that, Anna?
Yeah, I mean, there's two sides to it, isn't it? There's talking to the companies and encouraging them and showing them the benefits, but there's also talking to disabled people and making them feel comfortable and making them realise that there are really opportunities there and that there's this help and support to get them into these positions. I mean, a lot of people will feel disheartened or feel that it's not roles that they can apply for, just simply because typically it's not something that they would be think they would be considered for. So it's just talking to the candidates, helping them, guiding them. I mean, for us, what we would do, or what we have started doing, is advertising our roles on disability-specific job sites, so that they know, like, obviously we advertise them across all job sites, but making sure that they're on there so they know that that's available to them, these opportunities are there. It's encouraging people, talking about the benefits, not just to the employer, but to the candidate, of what they can bring, and building their confidence to be able to say, I have a disability and it's actually an attribute and it's something that we can bring. I can bring something different to your company, and that's why you should hire me. You know, make it a real positive aspect rather than something that, you know, you're shy away from saying. For us as well, like all our job specs, we make sure that they're all accessible, so they use, you know, the right size fonts, the right color fonts, not too light, so visually impaired people can definitely see the contrast. Find them easy to read, so understanding that some language, you know, might not be so easy for people with learning disabilities to understand, and making it very clear for everybody. And then making sure that the messaging within our job ads is very inclusive and it shows that we have equal opportunities and we are open to everything, because if it might seem such a small thing to put that at the end of the job spec, but actually it can mean a completely different, like can make a huge difference to a candidate in whether they apply or not.
Thank you. Ruth, I know that you're, as you said earlier, on this journey in your organisation, Leonard Cheshire. What's been your experience, and how do you think this has enriched the experience that you as an organisation have had, this engagement with people from various different backgrounds with different range of disabilities, etc.?
Well, I think, Liz, I think very much part of the conversation that we're all having. I mean, I think, we're all struggling for talent in whichever industry sector we're in. We all want to recruit talent. I think people with disabilities is no different from any other talent opportunity. I think it's been a really positive thing for us. I think it speaks to our values and it speaks to who we are. I think, from my colleagues' point of view, it's enhanced their roles, their responsibilities. It's given them a very different perspective. And I think for the individual, with a person with a disability, why wouldn't you? At the end of the day, for those of you who don't know, I'm a full-time wheelchair user. And I've always worked. I mean, I've never not been in employment. Don't get me wrong, it's not come without its struggles and its challenges, but I think, at the end of the day, I always felt that I could contribute. And I always felt that, why wouldn't I? The same as anybody else. I think, 1 in 5 of us will acquire a disability in our lifetimes. So I think this is not something, I think this is about, making sure that this is the last minority group that's really not had the same opportunities as other groups. And I think that, for me, it's, if we're to, and we do very successfully, talk to other organisations about employing people with disabilities, then why wouldn't we be the number one person that does that ourselves? I mean, that for me is just, it wouldn't make sense not to. So, when I joined in February, it was my key priority, and it's gone well. I mean, not without its challenges. You've got to get people to think differently. You've got to do different things, etc., etc. But it's been a really positive experience, and it's opened us up as an organisation to being exactly what we should be: inclusive for everybody.
Yeah, thanks, Ruth.
For me, to be honest with you, it doesn't feel, it doesn't feel alien. It feels like it should just be something that happens. And I think the last thing I'd say is what is super frustrating. If I look at the next generation of disabled people, they're still having the fights that I had when I tried to go to the employment market. Does that seem right in 2020, whatever year we're in? It's not right. It's very wrong. And I think that's what we need to fix. And I think, social care market is a fabulous market to work in. It's a fabulous sector. And, we all do wonderful things in this sector. So for me, it's about giving everybody the opportunity to work in this sector, regardless of anything, really.
Thanks very much for that, Ruth. Jonathan, you wanted to
I just thank you, Mark. I just wanted to sort of pick up a few points. I mean, I completely agree with Ruth. The moral case. Why on earth are we even having this discussion? Slightly beggars belief, but we are. But for the social care sector in particular, where all that we're about is supporting people to live their best lives possible, why on earth we're not doing that in the way we think about those in our care and those that we employ is just slightly staggering, particularly when we have 120,000 vacancies. Why on earth, as an employer, we would close ourselves off to that? It is just nonsensical. It just doesn't make good business sense, let alone the moral argument. But I did want to say, just thank Gilbert Mayo, because this is the first year that we've had a sector sponsor for the social care sector around Purple Tuesday. A bit sad that we haven't had one before, but the fact that we've got a recruitment agency in the sector standing alongside the likes of eBay and Standard Chartered and Sainsbury's saying, no, we're going to step forward, we're going to lead the march on this is incredibly important. So, and I just come down to the very simple fact that if we aren't doing this in social care, who on earth is?
Also, I think as well, I think we are not very good at showing our champions and our successes. And I really think that that's another area. I mean, Ruth, I didn't know, Ruth, that you were a wheelchair user. But you know, what a great example of somebody who's risen to a leadership role in an organisation. And I don't think we champion enough. But I guess the question for me is, to what extent do people with disabilities, it'd be great to ask people, feel that they either might be seen then as being totems or being seen as somebody who is always dragged out to prove the point? And again, how do we balance that to a point where we get really good role models, but we don't tip to being patronising? And I guess, I don't know, Tim, if you have a view on that, and I'll come back to you, Ruth, on that, if I may.
I've experienced both sides. One is I've been very, very privileged and honoured to work in an industry that have respected me for what my skill set is. And secondary, I was blind. But also I've been involved in, and this was in local authority, that were great to me in the early days when I was going from being sighted to non-sighted. But one very senior executive said, "Oh, Tim, you're one of our jewels in the crown because you're disabled." So I must admit I was very close to making him temporarily disabled. So for me, it is getting the balance right. First and foremost, I'm a big believer in that I'm around this table because of what I bring. It just so happens I have a disability. And if I was brought around this table because of my disability, I'm of the character that I wouldn't be here. And I know that the people around this table wouldn't have invited me anyway because they know what my character is. So for me, it is getting the balance right. But first and foremost, you won't understand the characteristics and the character of individuals unless you engage with them. That's the key again. It's about that engagement. Is how I engage with you determines how you engage with me, and vice versa. And we miss that because we get bogged down in bureaucracy. I can say it now because I'm retired now and just do all voluntary work. So
nobody can sack you to. Ruth, do you want to respond to that as well?
You know, I've been, listen, I don't know whether it's because I've been doggedly determined and I just won't take no for an answer, that I was absolutely always going to, you know, lead the life I wanted to lead and not what other people thought I should lead. I guess a bit like the gentleman, I faced both sides of the coin. I've never been asked, ever been asked what reasonable adjustments I would like. Never in all my working career.
I was told, go and learn Braille.
Yeah, so I've never been asked if I need any, and you know, listen, before I moved into not-for-profit, I was in the tech world, so I was in the commercial world. I guess a bit like the gentleman, I wanted to be there at the table because I felt that I was talented. I felt that I could make a contribution. And actually I felt that, you know, I would bring something different to that organization, that, you know, to their bottom line. If I was looking at it commercially, I was going to work hard and I was going to be the same as anybody else. So I guess I've had the same experience, both in different ways. And I've had people say to me, you know, why would you want to work? You're going to be for an employer, you'd be a lame duck. Why would they even want to employ you? Which I think is absolutely shocking. And I think, to Jonathan's point, you know, the fact that we're even having this conversation, I think we need to get to where LGBTQ and, you know, Black Lives Matter, where they've got to, it's a conversation. It's about having a conversation. It's about having it openly and engaging with the right people at the right time. And, you know, it's just asking, isn't it? You know, I much prefer people, and I'll just say this and then I'll shut up. You know, after the Paralympics, I had more people ask me to offer to help me at a petrol station than ever before. So when I filled up my car before, and listen, petrol stations are not accessible and not easy. And mostly I have to use a car because public transport is so rubbish in many parts. People would turn a blind eye, they'd look the other way, they wouldn't help me, didn't matter how much I was struggling with that dreadful nozzle that you have to put into the car. But after 2012, people all come up and ask me, and I used to say to people, and still do, thanks for asking, I'm okay though, but thank you very much for asking, because I didn't want them to leave me thinking that I would not, I was going to be difficult, and they wouldn't offer to help the next person. And so I think it's really interesting about awareness. And I think the disabled community needs to get to where LGBTQ and everybody's got to, because I think it's just about having a conversation. And it's not different. I mean, that's the bit that, that we're not talking like we are today, where we're discussing it. We should just do it, if I'm honest with you. I find it really quite frustrating in parts.
As care providers, I guess it's a really interesting question about how you just make sure that you're getting good talent into the right roles. And we will move on when we don't have the specialty. And Tim, to your point, when he said you were the jewel in the crown, it could have been worse. He could have said you're the tick in my box. But how do care providers?
But I just think social care is so notoriously poor at promoting the great things that it actually does, that I think it definitely wouldn't be one of those sectors that's trying to sort of, that the tick in the box is the phrase that you'd use. I mean, I think it's just this odd disconnect that seems to be there between why aren't we utilising the talent pool and the sort of service user base that we kind of work within. It just seems an odd bit, and it's just getting that awareness, that education right, I think is going to make a big difference. But I think there's certainly providers out there that are employing a raft of disabled people that are really supporting their service and doing some amazing things. It just don't think we know about it, because we're just notoriously bad at saying this is how great we are. In our internal press, everyone knows. Yeah. But it's that wider education piece, which is that the whole social care is a complete sector. We just don't tend to tell general public about what it is that we're actually doing, which then has a knock-on effect about what people actually think about the centres doing in general.
Mike, you wanted to make a point.
Yeah, just back to the point. So I'm often called Mike. Sometimes I'm called a 20%er. Because I have a visible disability like Ruth and like Tim, and sometimes I'm called a 17%er because 83% of people acquire their disability in life, 17 are born with their disability. So I'm in the kind of minority. But it's about mindset, and just very, very briefly, so we did some work around Purple Tuesday with a big corporate for the last year, and great thing about lockdowns was everything was virtual, and so the chief exec of this big corporate every Friday did a session, and he did a session on why disability matters to this organisation. And we'll all remember, then he finishes his speech and goes, "Does anyone want to come off mute and say anything?" And it never really happens, and there was silence, and then someone came off mute and went, "I never thought I would say this. I've worked in this organisation for 15 years. But today is the day I am letting everyone know that I have a mental health condition that I have hidden because I thought it would be to my detriment in this organisation." 30 seconds later, another one came off mute and said, "Well, on that basis, I'm going to let everyone know that I've got dyslexia. And I go home every night and do an extra hour and a half because that's my coping mechanism. But today is the day I'm going." 7 minutes later, that chief executive had 8 more disabled people in his organisation that he didn't know 8 minutes beforehand. And so the point that we need to remember is, as we go out in social care, given that 22% of the population will have disabilities and 80%, it is almost certain that you will have disabled staff in your organisation that simply have not disclosed. And a part of the social care strategy in Purple Tuesday would be to create an environment, an ordinary environment, that makes your staff feel it is in their best interest to be authentic and disclose their disability. Because the moment they do that, they will be your snowball in terms of recruiting talented individuals who happen to have a disability, and will tell service users and their family that you are a different type of organisation and the values that you have. And sometimes it is easy that we sit around and go, "My goodness, what is the big next initiative? How should we do this?" Well, the reality is, just be authentic. Start talking about the issues. Think about your plans for the following year, disability proofing them, and you start that kind of process, and very quickly, and that organisation has totally changed within 7 months, to the point where they went out for a new director of marketing and got someone who I knew had a disability, who is absolute talent, who said, I want to go and work for them because of their approach to diversity and inclusion. And sometimes the answers are really, really simple, and I think we have a real huge opportunity in social care to do the simple things that will get that snowball absolutely running down the hill at a really fast pace.
So what I'm hearing there is communication. It's very important to communicate, and actually, if you communicate, you get this conversation going, and then you embed this from within rather than from the outside. I think if you embed it from within, you'll have a much more meaningful conversation. I think generally speaking, around the point of recruitment, there was actually a very interesting research by Eventbrite that was taken place by UCL. And at the back of that, it was established that from a recruitment perspective for the disabled individuals, the feedback was as such where they were being pushed down due to lack of experience. And the lack of experience was because of the gaps that were on their CV because of illness during the course of their lives. And because of those particular gaps, those opportunities weren't given. Some of the other issues were around interviews. So that a lot of the interviewers weren't as engaging when they had that face-to-face interview with a disabled individual, and that was the feedback that was given by some of these employers or disabled individuals. And generally speaking, it was sort of the lack of confidence as well for these individuals. But again, it comes down to communication and how, about your point as well, about how you sort of communicate and engage with these individuals. You've got to talk to them, and it's a people's person sort of exercise. And so it's a lack of confidence that these individuals had when they were in employment, and the perception as well, if I say something, or how am I perceived to be seen by other individuals within the firm. So it's all about sort of managing that, really, in my view, and making sure that these individuals are welcomed, and are embedded within the team. So there's a whole wide piece there, I think, to be done from within the organisation rather than from outside.
It absolutely is about communication, but it has to be authentic, and it is about mindset. You can write anything, you can have a strategy on a bit of paper that never sees the light of day, but actually if you have a mindset that says, we are going to stop delineating between disabled and non-disabled, we're going to see service users and our workforce as part of the same continuum. We are, to Ruth's point, we are absolutely focused on talent. How do we squeeze talent in the social care sector? Well, we draw on people who've got lived experience of being a service user, because they can bring some added value that we can't. And it's, Tim will know from the sport industry that it's athletes and people who go into administration because they've got lived experience which they bring. To me, it just makes absolute common sense to be able to tap into people who have that lived experience and make them the workforce of tomorrow. And there's a huge, huge opportunity. And then you just support your staff and underpin them with the knowledge, confidence and approaches that will enable a really diverse, powerful workforce and in really engaged service users.
Well, just to build on those points, but it's making the start. It's having the confidence and the communication to say, okay, look, we don't know all of the answers, but let's just make a start. And the reason the foundation, partnered with Purple and with Championing Social Care is to say, we know there are a lot of small and medium companies who are struggling, that they think, oh my gosh, this is just another thing we need to do. Where do we start? And can we make it really, really simple? Back to Ruth's point, it's not about talking about it, as important it is to have the conversation. It's saying, okay, how do you translate that into some really easy action. So the fantastic thing with Purple Tuesday is you just say, I'm going to make one commitment as an organisation. Can I just do one thing to start that action? For the foundation, we thought we were fantastic. We thought we were all okay. And we looked at our website and went, yeah, look, we're doing pretty well with our website. We've got that accessible. Oh, hang on a second. Not one of our films has got subtitles. Now, it costs next to nothing to add those. That's brilliant for those who can't listen to them. But actually for everyone, we all watch videos on social media this day on the train, hopefully muted unless you're my daughters. And so we need those subtitles. So it's a win-win for everyone. So the point is it's really simple actions that you can take. And also, I mean, I was delighted that Mike, as part of his commitment, said to this, look, we will give a discount for social care operators that signed up to Purple 365, which is just such a simple way to get some very, very practical hints and tips like that and some understanding. So, yeah, that offer is still out there. We've been so pleased that many social care providers have signed up for Purple Tuesday, have made commitments, have signed up to Purple 365. And the point of today is just to celebrate some of that success, as you say, but just try and encourage more people to start that conversation in their sector.
Actually, sorry, just from my mic, he took the words out of my mouth. It's quite easy to create a policy or a document that says this is what we do, and it sits in a drawer and nobody reads it and it doesn't get emailed to anybody. It's those incremental sort of actions, but the one bit is the realisation that there's things that they probably are doing, but maybe just didn't really even think about it, and then opening up to those sort of people that maybe having concerns about their disabilities and kind of felt like they had to sneak through the radar to get through because they felt like that was an issue. But actually, being more open about that widens how people see that organisation, because social care is probably one of, unless you're the local pub or the village shop, is one of the only industries that still exists at the moment that you pretty much all of your workforce and all of your customer base come from the smallest mile radius. In a care home specifically, and even in home care, because that travel just doesn't exist. You'll get sort of maybe, Andrew will probably back me on this, you'll get maybe 5% of people that have come long distance because maybe family live close to that location, but ultimately everything's in the local community. So your marketing is yes, there's bits that's done online, and yes, there's things that's out in front, and we're all, there's a business mindset behind it. It creates not only a customer experience, but it also creates how you're seen as an organisation in the local community, because the conversations that happen at the school gates and the conversations that happen at Sainsbury's and the conversations at the Curry House, they're not only your customers, they're also your recruits, they're also your retention. So people, it's always baffled me that people don't focus on that being the most important thing, because how you're discussed in that small community or that town where you've got, I'm talking from an elderly care home perspective, and that's why I looked at Andrew, because we've got similar sort of models in that. We have built environments, residential built environments in small towns. And we all know that everybody that we employ comes from that town pretty much, and all of our customers come from that town pretty much. So actually these types of discussions impact on both recruitment and retention. It also recruits on the customer experience. In the built environment, we've already ticked that box, because I shouldn't have said that, ticking boxes again, sorry Tim. We don't need, because we're doing that for our the service users. So we've already got that bit done. It's kind of how are we, and then the conversations that then get had locally, people start going, oh, they're doing this. I really want to be there. I really want to work in that environment. I mean, Angela and I had a conversation about a year ago or 2 years ago about the local bowls club that you did when you were trying to, a new home opening in an area. What was the first thing you did? Didn't put any banners up, didn't go put something in a newspaper. You go, let's get some of our staff to go and help rebuild the local bowls club. And it was that engaging with that community. So I know that's about specific there, but it's about how we use that in terms of getting people to go, they're engaging with the disabled community. We should be part of that altogether.
But I think that everyone's quite tired as well as our workforce, and things have happened a lot through the pandemic that's impacted their mental health. So I think as employers, we have to know that there's a lot of people that have maybe gained mental health issues because of the pandemic. They've worked so excessively hard throughout the pandemic and stuff. So again, as providers and owners, we want to retain these staff thank them for everything. So we ourselves need to be having those conversations to make sure that everyone's okay throughout.
Yeah, and actually that raises the point of what has changed during the pandemic, and particularly around how much pressure has been put on our colleagues because they have been in the most incredibly stressful environment. And the issue about how we support people with mental health challenges is also really, really important. Margaret, I don't know if you want to add anything to that, because I know that's something that the department has been very focused on recently.
Yes, it has indeed. I mean, we still haven't seen the final impact of long COVID, but we know that our workforce, they're tired, they've worked extremely hard throughout and have done amazing things. And certainly I'm aware of many homes and many domiciliary care agencies where people didn't go home for weeks, if not months, because they stayed in their care home to keep the residents safe and to, curtail the infection transmission. One of the homes that I'm working with in the West Midlands, they've actually employed a psychologist. They have a session every fortnight for all of their staff to go, either as a group or they can have individual sessions to keep them well, because they were getting so worried about their burnout rates. And that home, it's a small home, it's owned by a gentleman, and he understood that impact. They've actually had no COVID in the home at all. Not a single resident got an infection, but also they run their own bank of staff so that they actually extend that generosity to people who maybe only do a few hours a month. And it's ironic actually in that it's going back to the subject that you've just been talking about, the locality issue. It's a small care home in a small market town. All of the staff are local and they employ people who want to work full-time or part-time, but they also employ people who are looking for a second job or just a few hours of a weekend just to be able to contribute. And that's how they've kept themselves going throughout the pandemic. Very impressed I've been.
Thanks, Margaret. Tom, can I ask you about the whole issue of recruitment, and particularly how you would deal with, or how you think employers would deal with people who might have had to shield during the pandemic, but now want to go back into roles and into the workforce, and how you might present that, because there will be gaps in people's CVs. So what's the strategy that people are coming up with from your perspective as recruiters?
The answer is not very well. Hiring managers, we've had it on multiple occasions where they've said there's been a gap for 18 months or 9 months, whatever it may be. It's about educating them. Not everybody is the same. Not everybody has been able to deal with the impact of the pandemic as well as you have, the hiring manager, who has a problem with this gap in the CV. And it's about educating them. And look, before this happened, they've got an exemplary CV. They've always been in work. They've been very, very loyal to providers, to companies, to roles. So again, it's about educating and making them see the angles. I think it's, if they're going to come to you with no, we'll consider them because they've not worked in a period of time, then it simply is just going back to them and just saying, well, there's reasons for that. And that's, for recruiters from our side, that's about us really nailing the reasons for that in the initial brief that we take with the candidate, and then putting that across in the initial submission to the hiring managers, so that they can't, well, it limits the opportunity for them to use that as an excuse. If we've already preempted it, they can't then go, well, it makes it a lot harder for them to then go, well, I don't want to, they've not worked for 18 months or whatever it may be. So it's about educating, and it's about being honest, honesty and transparency, I think.
Thanks. Tim, you wanted to make a point.
It's just, to me, that we overcomplicate things sometimes. And I think one of the things we learned at London 2012, we've heard about some of the impact of that, was the key phrase was brilliant basics. Get the basics right all the time, and then work on the other stuff afterwards. But going back to saying people who may have had to have time out because of COVID or whatever, what happens when people take career breaks? So it's no different. So we're looking for things that have already been there and have been there for years. We know some organisations allow their workforce to have a secondment or a career break for a year before they come back in. So for me, there are lots of examples out there that this is not the exception, it's the norm. So let's not get hung up on some of these things sometimes. Let's be really, really positive and take a look internally at ourselves rather than worry about everything else. And for me, that's the key. It's believe in yourself and believe in the individuals, because individuals with a disability, if they didn't want that job badly enough, they wouldn't be there in front of you, because they're already behind the 8 ball because we've been labelled and that stigma of disability.
Jonathan, you wanted.
Just very quickly, because I am conscious of time. It's just, there's two bits of this that we've been looking at. There's absolutely about the staff that we employ, but I just want to pick up on a couple of points from Mike about the language we use and our mindset in terms of those in our care. And Ruth was brilliant earlier. She said, I hope I've got this right, Ruth. Yeah, I have led the life I wanted to lead, not the life that others thought I should lead. Now, as social care providers, that's what we are surely trying to provide for every single person in our care. And when Mike quite rightly says we've got to think about those with disabilities as customers or as consumers, it's the mindset behind that. We have got to, as a sector and as providers, be thinking, how do we enable those in our care to have the independence that they are making those decisions, that we're enabling those people to be in the driving seat on those decisions, and stop this sort of paternalistic, kindly approach of, aren't you lucky to be having this social care, that you're the recipient of something, you've got to be driving it. So whether that's in the commissioning model but just as providers, I just don't want us to lose sight of. I know clearly we're all focused on the the workforce issues, but this is as much about a mindset about how we are thinking of those that are in our care. I will say now, I know we all struggle with language. I hate the phrase service users. It's so passive. Forgive me, Mike, I know why you've used it, but others as well. That they are people in our care, they're individuals, and we just need to change that mindset, back to Mike's point.
But also you raise an important point there about commissioning, and I do think there is a bit of a disconnect between the role of commissioning and how these issues play out in providers' minds. And I guess it'd be interesting to know, Mandip, what's your view about where commissioning can sit in delivering this outcome of a more I suppose, welcoming workforce?
Yeah, it goes back to my sort of previous point about actually understanding the workforce, making sure that you can recruit the right individuals and are inclusive in that respect. The key issue is not to sort of dismiss individuals because of their lack of experience or if they'll be adaptable or not. We might make a fantastic point about they're more adaptable than you think they are, and I think everyone needs to remember that.
Yeah, I think unfortunately time has beaten us, but I hope that you would all agree that this has been a really fascinating and very challenging on some levels discussion. And what I've really liked about it and the points that were made about treating people as individuals and acknowledging that we all have things that we might need our employers to accommodate, and people with disabilities are no different in that. And I think we have got to change the mindset. So it's about being really clear that we have roles that people will be able to fulfill and they'll be able to bring their skills. And often people with disabilities have an extra insight into how services would be improved. And also, Tim, you made that really great point about different skills people bring, which will then help and enhance the ability of the organisation to function. So I think, we've all had a really good discussion about making this about people, making it about people's skills, experience and knowledge, and not separating people out. And Ruth, you made those great points in what you said about being very open and inclusive. And I guess what we have to do now, and I think probably everybody who's been involved in this seminar this morning, we are in effect the converted. But now our challenge is to go out there and to be the evangelists for this and to make sure that other minds think the way we do. And I've taken away the very important point that we just need to champion this, and we also need to give people really good examples of where it's worked, and we need to be very clear about the tangible outcomes to the organisation of doing this, so that it becomes something that it's not nice to do, but it's essential to do because it's part of our business strategy. It's the way in which we have a stronger business because we have the voices of people who are coming with different perspectives, and the more diversity you have, the more perspectives you have, ultimately the stronger your business is. So I want to really thank everybody who's contributed brilliantly today. I want to thank our colleagues who have been in the virtual world, and I'm sorry that I sometimes didn't get to you quite as often as I should have done, and I apologise about that. But I think this seminar is the start of something, so let's all go out there and be the evangelists for it. So thank you, and thank you again to Purple Tuesday, to the CareTech Foundation, and also a big thank you to Welltower for letting us use their very beautiful building in central London. So thanks everyone.